Okay, I think this is game 4 of the match between Canada and France. Amoffett versus gamesou. It's another fairly quick one, but again, full of high quality play and interesting decisions. So the board immediately it jumps out to me that there's crown and wharf. And if you get your draw going with crown, crown, wharf, you could do whatever you like to do on this board. Use giant to smash people's decks. Use pillage to pluck things out of their hand. There's also triumph and conquest. So conquest gains a couple silvers and gives you VP for it. Triumph gives you VP based on how many things you've gained this turn. So there's a lot of potential in those two events. Are those events? Those are events in those two events. But all things start with getting a lot of draw going, and the only draw here is wharf. So you have to go after that and then see what it is where you would like to take your deck here. I was thinking maybe giants, just to go see if you could smash all the nice things out of your opponent's deck. Presumably they will do something similar. Or something competitive involves crowns on wolves, right? So you could go smashing the crowns on the wolves and see who ends up with more things at the end of the giant smashathon. Speaking of giants, we also have vampires on the board, and this game kind of highlights like vampire is very very good. The goodness how good vampire is here. It's actually so good. I would be tempted to open double silver here just to give myself the best shot of picking up a vampire early. Remember, vampire rotates; it becomes a bat after you play it, so you get the gain in half as often as usual. So the earlier the better, obviously. So in fact, gamesou makes that choice. He goes double silver, searching for the vampire, presumably. Amoffett chooses a slightly different route, going for sacrifice and silver, which may get you there, but I think silvers are a bit more likely to do so. So gamesou picks up another silver here on turn 3, so that's 3 silvers for him. Amoffett has a nice draw here. Sacrifice trashes a copper and lets him pick up a vampire on the shuffle. gamesou turn 3 and 4, just silvers. That's not where you want to be, and he's only able to pick up his vampire on turn 5, whereas Amoffett follows him on turn 5 and gets a second vampire. So already the momentum, the initial lead is with Amoffett here with the additional vampire. Not just the additional vampire, but picking up the vampire one shuffle earlier. So if vampire does come out, more important than giving your opponent a copper or whatever it was that greed hex was, is gaining the wharf. Now wharf cannot draw vampire dead, which is nice. On the other hand, you can't crown a vampire, so whatever. That's fine. Right? That is completely fine. So he gains wharf and crown here, and he's off to the races. His bat comes out, trashes a couple of estates. He's looking in very, very good shape here. Another vampire for gamesou. So I believe they have 3 vampires each now. Amoffett, with his sacrifice, is also a little bit ahead on the trashing. Not just because of the sacrifice, but again because of the early vampire. Turns into a bat, bat comes out, trashes, turns back into a vampire. You could get more gain and done in the game earlier you pick up a vampire. It's very, very critical to get that as early as possible if there's a rich board like this for it, right? Crowns, wolves, giants, pillages, even cursed villages at some point. Um, even early in the game, a cursed village is fine. Harbingers, they're all lovely targets for vampire. So my point is, you're never going to not have something to do with your vampire on this board. So they have been pressing the vampire pile heavily here, and I think that's right. Like, if you could play with 3, the more vampires you could play with, the better it is for you. If you could play with like 3 or 4, I feel that's very, 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 very good for you. Emoffit goes to pull down another one here. War comes out, trashes a silver from game, so that doesn't matter at this point too much now that he has picked up some vampires and whatnot. And another crown for Amoffett here, right? So really you should be searching for the crown wharf setup here as best as possible. Yeah, I know it might be difficult sometimes, but you have the bat coming around to trash. It's a trasher that doesn't get in the way of your action cards, whereas sacrifice might. So eventually you'll get there. Eventually you'll get there. The more crowns, the more wolves you put into the deck is the better chance you have of connecting crown wolf. Usually you get crown and wolf together, and then you have to wait for a bit before you see something like crown wolf. Usually that's how it goes. So anyways, both of them are going to be hitting the wolf pile primarily first, and then go after the crowns. Wolf is the only draw, right? So you want to try to secure as much of that as possible. As much of that as possible here. So I think Amoffett could have had a couple extra dollars here, but I guess he only wanted to buy a wolf anyway, so it didn't really matter. And there he has the nice setup, right? So now he has crown and wolf. So maybe next turn that should get him some. He also has a couple bats. Well, a couple bats. A flock of bats. What is called? What do you call a group of bats? He has a group of bats in his hand there, so he could really just get very clean and hope on the next shuffle that he starts to see this crown wolf thing here. And then he has free reign over what to do with his deck. I would go for a couple of giants, honestly. Well, after the crowns, right? I'll get a lot of crowns. And then maybe think about giants. Just maybe think about giants, just to cement your lead. Just to cement your lead. So crown here for game 2, and I assume the last wolf. I assume the last wolf. No, he actually goes for a couple of crowns instead, leaving the wolf there. So I don't know. If I agree with that, I'm not tracking the decks that well now or during the game to know whether or not Double Crown was better for his deck or whether the Wharf and the Crown was better. But anyway, he doesn't find Crown Warfare, but he does do Crown Sacrifice, which gives him actions, which lets him set up. And look at that. 4 gains of 5 costs. That is tremendous. That is great. That is great. gamesou also has the 4 vampires, but he doesn't have them in a pretty row like this. Does not have them in a pretty row like this. So naturally you have to spend some time here, see what it is you want to do. You have 4 gains of 5 costs and $7 here. I was thinking to build a bit here to get a couple more crowns. He only has 3 of them, which is a little bit. A couple more crowns, the last wharf, and a giant or 2. That seems reasonable. I don't think gamesou can end the game in his position. However, Amoffett decides to liquidate here in a sense. Meaning he goes for a bunch of duchies with his vampires and he purchases one. So, okay, he might be looking at something with duchies and dukes, maybe? I'm not sure. Or maybe he's looking at that the piles are very low and duchies are third pile, so he can empty wharves, crowns, and then duchies to finish the game. But getting those duchies at that point kinda stunts his deck's growth here, and he can't quite support everything. You see on this turn here, yeah, like just the Wharf in play. You would really like to see Crown Wharf in play at the very minimum at this point, especially given the position he was in before that. I think there's quite a bit of game left here. There's a lot of points locked up in Triumph, and in his position now where his deck is pretty clean. He did buy a couple coppers last turn just so that his bats would have something to feed on to turn back into vampires. But with the draw, with better draw, that is more reliable, right? You can support more vampires with more draw and just take the game wherever you like at in that position there. So yeah, what I'm saying is I don't like the duchies. I think he could have built a bit more giants' money as well, and just go from there, right? Then start to say about points maybe. You could also, a nice little trick is that you could get a few triumphs, a couple triumphs or something, and then use those estates as bat food. So you would slowly be emptying the estate pile while picking up heaps of points. Heaps of points. So you could buy some coppers and then triumph, like crown, giant, copper, triumph, or something like that. And that's 6 and 7 points, or 5 and 6 points respectively, plus the estates, and you give your bat lots of food to turn back into vampires. Interesting interaction was brought up here during the game that vampires do not actually count towards your triumph gains because the vampire comes after the triumph. So just something to keep in mind if you ever face a kingdom with both vampire and triumph on it. Doesn't work as well as you think it would work. Anyways, Amoffett manages to convert a bunch of his bats back into vampires by feeding on the spare coppers, and you see he purchases a bunch of coppers here. And again, that's just bat food, right? But his vampires, he sees three of them here, and he's gonna pick up the remaining duchies. So he has all 8 duchies now, and there's just a crown left and a wharf left to finish the game. Unfortunately for gamesou, he just wasn't able to get his deck up and running to a point where he could maybe do something with triumph and conquest here. It just wasn't there for him. The opening was very rough for him. Opening double silver and not seeing a single vampire on turns 3 and 4. Quite unlikely, like 10 or 12% or something, to not pick up a 5 after opening double silver. So that was not ideal for him, and he just wasn't able to recover well enough from that point. So he tries to go after some points here, but Amorpha just has more than enough time to turn his bats back into vampires and just wait for them to roll back around to pick up the remaining crown and remaining wharf here. So he does actually manage to line up crown wharf here, which is very good for him. He's going to purchase a wharf. He actually manages to find enough money to do that. And yeah, he just has to wait on a vampire to show up now to end the game. So he does win this game in the end here. Quite a comfortable points lead, not much gamesou can do here. And the match actually finishes, I think we are 2-2 here, and the match finishes 3-3. So Canada gets half a point for this match. And the last match actually finished 5-1 in Canada's favor. So overall, we have 1.5 points, and the French has 2.5 points from this. Alright, thanks for watching.